Okay, moving on. We're now going to look at the other part of being powerless over alcohol, which is the obsession to drink. Now, during the break, I got reprimanded for using the word the big book when people don't know what that is, but anytime I do refer to that, please remember that it's the book Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the title of the book. Another comment was made at the break that I thought was interesting too. I had one of the participants tell me that, one of the ways I proved I was not an alcoholic was I never drank vodka because I knew alcoholics drink vodka. That's a good point too. The alcoholic is pretty good at fooling himself. Okay, so part 2 of step 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, is number 1, watch the Chalk Talk video that I described earlier. Go to 123 Vertec on YouTube. Go to part 2 of the Chalk Talk video and watch it. It describes my understanding of what the big book says about the obsession to alcohol, the alcoholic mind. Now, as we do this, I'm going to refer back to the guidebook that we're using, the Taking Steps guidebook, and we're going to start on page 5. The definition of obsession as listed in that guidebook is a persistent preoccupation with an unreasonable idea. Now, if you've read AA's 12 steps, you know that step 2 says, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, implying that the alcoholic has been strangely insane. That sounds like a strong word. But when we look at the reality of what the alcoholic has done, repeatedly gone back to drinking, even when they've got this terrible allergy to alcohol, you got to say that's kind of crazy. So the definition of insanity in our guidebook is an unreasonable idea seeming reasonable at the time. An unreasonable, illogical, doesn't make any sense at all idea that seems logical at the time. Sane thinking is the ability to reason soundly, weighing evidence that may be valid to either side of a given situation. The ability to choose freely is dependent on sane thinking and sound reasoning. On page 24 in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm going to quote a few things here on page 24. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. I have suggested to alcoholics that they read that paragraph till it makes sense to them. It's on page 24, it's in italics, and it's the truth. The alcoholic has no defense against the first drink at certain times. Watch the Chalk Talk. Now, the question is, do I have symptoms of an alcoholic mind? Do you have symptoms of blank spots that cause you to start drinking as casual as though it's no big deal? Even though maybe a month ago you swore you would never drink because of the demoralizing events in your life that we talked about in the last section. So here are the questions that I suggest you ask yourself in an attempt to see if you have the alcoholic mind, the obsession, the insanity. I was watching a Father Martin movie part of our treatment in the treatment center was to watch this movie. So I watched this movie 1,000 times, because I'm always presenting this movie to the group. And in there, he makes this statement. He says, the insanity of alcoholism is not the crazy things that the alcoholic does when he's drunk. Anybody who's drunk is going to do stupid stuff. The insanity of alcoholism is that a perfectly sober alcoholic will pick up the first drink of the next spree. That's the insanity of alcoholism. Do I have the insanity, the alcoholic mind? So here are the questions I suggest you ask yourself. And again, this can be done in your notebook, reviewing your drinking history. Reviewing your drinking history, list specific demoralizing episodes that led to your resolve to stop drinking. In other words, look at those demoralizing events you have on your allergy to alcohol inventory and ask yourself, after I stopped drinking, usually an alcoholic has a demoralizing event and he says, you know what, I've just got to quit drinking completely. He might make it a day, he might make it a week, he might make it a month, he might make it 6 months. But at some point, he will carelessly take the first drink again. I suggest that you look at the first drink following one of those demoralizing events. So list the demoralizing events. Dates, or at least a reference point. Bring it back up into your memory. The times when you swore off, when you said, okay, I've got to quit. This has got to stop. Now, Bill Wilson, the guy that wrote the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, his Bible is at the AA Museum in Akron, Ohio. And in there's 3 specific times where he swore off, swore he would never drink again. In the Bible, he wrote it, I'll never drink again, and dated it, and signed it. And yet he started again. This is what we're looking for. Do I have an alcoholic mind that takes me back to drinking no matter what the necessity to stop? Question number 2, now go back through your list and try to remember exactly what you were thinking at the moment you actually took the first drink following each sober episode. So let's say I have 4 demoralizing events that were worthy of me quitting. Give me an example of one. Somebody. Lost my family. Swore I would never drink again. Now, what we're talking about in this question is to fill in this blank, which is the very first drink. See, after the first drink, it doesn't matter. The very first drink following this period of sobriety, whether it was a day or a week or a month or 6 months, that first drink, what was I thinking right then? Because probably, if you got an alcoholic mind, you forgot about this demoralizing event, and you were only thinking that this time it's going to be different. This is like gold. If you're trying to see if you're powerless over alcohol, number 1, you've realized you got an allergy to alcohol from the inventory we did on the last section, and now number 2, you're trying to see that no matter what the reason for me to stop, I start again without thinking. I was talking to a guy one time and he told me, look, he thought that I wanted him to take responsibility for all of his drinking. So he was apologizing for telling me the truth. But he said, look, I had been sober for a month And I was going over to help my aunt clean up her house. And I found myself in a liquor store. And he thought that was a statement that I was going to argue with him about. That I was going to say, now look, Terry, you need to be honest about this. That's not really what's going on. You purposefully set yourself up, or something like that. But see, no, I wanted him to see the truth. And the truth was, he found himself in a liquor store. The guy that swore off of drinking because he crashed his car and maybe even hurt or killed somebody a month before. And he swore he would never drink again. I know a guy that shot his wife, and he still started drinking again. Let's say that a month ago, I crashed my car and I swore I'd never drink again. And then today I'm mowing the grass and I need gas for my lawnmower, so I get in the car and go down to 7-Eleven, and I got no intention of drinking, let's say. I've heard this very thing. The guy goes into the 7-Eleven to pay for the gas, and he sees the beers in the cooler. Well, one of those will be good today. This is the same guy that crashed his car and killed somebody a month ago. It's not that funny, but it's what happens. There are times when we can't think straight. How logical is this list? Were we really thinking? And when the alcoholic realizes that when he takes that first drink, he really wasn't able to bring into his consciousness anything that could help him remember that a month ago I had an accident and hurt somebody. So question 3 is, where was your resolve at that moment that you took that first drink? Now look, realistically, there may only be a couple of these. This is my experience working with people. There may only be a couple of times where you can see this black and white. But if it happened even once, you can realize that this is no mere habit. This is a fatal progression. This is something that has its way with you. And after all, that's what we're trying to do in step 1. If we're going to take step 1, we're going to have to admit the truth. We're going to have to realize it's true that I have no control over how much I drink when I drink, and I can start drinking again no matter what happened yesterday. It can happen to me again today. Once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. Except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power.